All right, on this beautiful Sunday morning, we are very delighted to have our mentor, our shaman, our leader, our industry hero, Stuart McMillan, joining us
Oh, I
for our.
thought you were referring to Les.
Oh, no. His intro will come in a minute.
Mhm. Uncle Stuart McMillan.
Podcast engineer connoisseur, Les Spellman, joining us as well. And we are very excited to have this conversation. Kidding aside, I know we've done a lot of stuff together over the years, and we got this event coming up in Cayman, and I think this is a cool time of year for us because for Les and I, we're starting to kind of gear up and we're getting ready for combine season coming up next year, and then Stu, for you, you're kind of coming out of your season and coming down, and I feel like it's always kind of created this little window at the end of the year where we get a good exchange of information, and there's some different perspectives that are coming to the table. So I know we don't really have a formal agenda as to where this thing is going to go today, but I know, Stu, you've mentioned a couple of times you're pretty deep right now into some of the complexity sciences, and on Les and I's side, we're working on seems like everything all the time, but really trying to put this whole system together that is going to build into the combine period. And I know we're going to have a couple of questions for you as it relates to those two ends and just this systemized approach, the complex nature of having multiple people involved in one system, the complexity of having 35, 40 different athletes with different archetypes. And really what I've always been interested in is how those things end up materializing into cut and dry decision making and how we can be more efficient and economical with the time that we do have. So Les, I know you got a couple of things to add on to that too, but those are kind of really the directions that I was looking to head in today.
And Danny, I want to say that it's great to be here with you.
Thank you, sir.
And I appreciated the invite and the introduction.
Uncle Stu McMillan. My introduction was a little bit better on outtake 15 when I was trying to fix all this, but it's all good. We'll move past it. Stu, we'll start off with one question. You're gonna hate this question though, so just preparing you. What's one belief you held 10 years ago that you no longer hold today? I had to start off with something.
Why did you think I was going to hate that question?
Because I know you.
What was the prompt on ChatGPT that gave you that question?
Oh, this is pulling directly from a Huberman playbook.
Is it really? Is that one of the questions he asked?
I think so. Something along those lines, but it's like a good Google starter,
So you're putting
before we get
yourself,
the complex system.
you're putting yourself on the level with Huberman again?
I mean, he did a podcast with you. I did a podcast with you. So there's levels to it, but hey, we've
I
done
didn't
the
have
same.
to start Huberman's podcast 17 times.
Oh yeah, but you're getting paid for this, which is
Ah.
why you're here. Which is why you're here, right?
Oh, all right. Let's talk about that.
You'll get a check. You'll get a check in the mail
Right.
at some point. But yeah, I knew you'd hate that question.
I mean, there's lots of beliefs, right? I mean, I think the knowledge is fluid, and we're changing our opinions on things often. I think the question is, what major thing did you think a decade ago that maybe you don't think now? And I feel like probably the most primary thing that I thought a decade ago was the importance of a technical model that should be adhered to by most. And the role of the coach, or a role of the coach, was to try to match the athlete's mechanics to that technical model in as great a way as possible. Now, and I think if it might be 12 or 15 years ago, because I think my thoughts on that started to change when I was in the UK, when I was working with three very, very different elite sprinters who moved in very, very different ways. And prior to that, I had sort of taught to a model. And then my experience with these three sprinters, Dwayne Chambers, Christian Malcolm, Marlon Devonish, who would all ran very, very fast and had long and successful careers, moved in extremely different ways, clearly produced force in totally different ways, moved down the track in different ways, lifted in different ways. So it made me sort of not necessarily rethink that I was doing, but update my thinking into something that was maybe a little bit different and new. And that at the same time, I was starting to get into the work of Paul Glazier, who is, or more into the work of Paul Glazier, who's a professor at Sheffield Hallam University. And his work has been very influential in my thinking around this ever since. So that's probably the biggest thing. There's many.
Yeah. And Danny, like, I want you to dive into the complex systems part, because before we got on, you talked a little bit about how that's one thing you're trying to understand from Stu. Is like let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's obviously a massive topic. I think the specific point of interest that I've always had, or that I continue to have, is how it relates to the chaos factor, and the trade-off of, or the transitioning of, complexity to chaos. And I think that that's always been kind of the best euphemism for the combine setting, is that we're never in a controlled state at any point. It's hardly ever predictable, right? There's very little within this combine setting that is automated. It's all how we respond and react. And there's so many different people that are involved, from a high volume of athletes to an enormous amount of coaching staff and support staff. And it felt, particularly last year, it always feels like we're really trying to manage the line between chaotic and complex. And it seems that the more or the higher number of people that are involved in a system at large, the more challenging, that balance really becomes, because there's so many variables that are a part of this. So I don't know that I have a direct question off of that, but as it relates to this process of, from the coaching side, from the staff side, what are some of the strategies that we can lean into to help better prepare for this, knowing that it's going to come, knowing that it's unavoidable, but we still have this, 3-month runway of putting strategies together to be able to manage this well. And I think that's really where my primary interest lies.
Was that a question?
Kind of a thought, but the question being, like, when we look at it as a complex system, we understand that there's difficulty to this. And what are some of the preventative strategies that we can lean into to better prevent, quote unquote, things getting chaotic and spinning out of control? And how do we understand that things are going to be complex and really appreciate that and lean into it without allowing it to get to a true chaotic point?
Yeah. First, you have to kind of leave aside the word control. You can't control complexity. So I think that's your first strategy, is we don't try and control a complex system. Chaos will emerge in complex relationships from time to time. That's just the nature of complexity. But strategies can be put in place to try to limit maybe some of those chaotic moments. And like all complex systems, there's a hierarchy to their understanding. And it's why the most highly functioning teams have, the most common thing that highly functional teams have is a true deep understanding of their purpose, and everybody within the team is on the same page. Like they're all on the bus, and they know where the bus is going, and they all are buying into the direction of this, where this bus is going. And if you got one person on that bus who wants to go somewhere else, then through the nonlinear effects that happen in complex systems, it can affect the entirety of the system. So it's first is, what is the purpose of the complex system? That's the hierarchical perspective of complexity. There has to be a purpose, and all of the component parts need to understand what the purpose is. So that's first. Like, do we all know what we're doing? Like, what is the objective here? Understanding also that all complex systems interact with complex systems and nest within other complex systems. So you can have multiple different purposes depending upon how you scale the system. Like, at what scale are we actually talking to? So, if we zoom all the way out and look at the Spellman performance combine preparation period, what is the purpose of that? And we have an understanding of that. Everybody in the system knows what that is. And then every system that interacts with that, and every system that nests within that, what are the purposes of those as well? Identify then all of the component parts within it, and have rules of engagement of how all of those component parts interact. And then that's how you set up a quote unquote a system. Like or a functioning system is, what are those rules? Are you using heuristics? Do you have models? Do you have mental models that you all adhere to? Do we have, do we all understand what those are? And I think when you're building these models, or you're building these heuristics, or these rules of engagement, it's really important that we try to limit them to the point where it speaks to the purpose of the system, but doesn't get things too overly complicated. And you're right. Like, one of the things you said, the bigger a team becomes, the harder it is to control. You can't control it, so we got to put that aside. But the harder it is, or the more complex it is, right? There's more component parts within it. So it's harder for us to understand those relationships. It's more difficult. There's more component parts. So there's more areas where this can go wrong. If you've got 5 people, it's pretty easy for these 5 people to be aligned on all of the different purposes and the rules of engagement. If you've got every single person that you add, it gets harder and harder and harder and harder. There's more of a chance that somebody's off doing their own thing. And we also have to understand that, maybe most importantly in complexity, is each part continuously and autonomously interacts with each other in totally nonlinear ways. Right? So and that's what contributes to the product. The emergence of the big complex adaptive system.
So if I can take what you said right there, and Les, one thing we've talked about, especially as it relates to this podcast thing, is having a lot of transparency with things that haven't gone well, or that we didn't succeed with, right? And I think one of the goals for some of the content that we're trying to produce is taking what we've done, auditing it objectively, and then again being very transparent and like, hey, this didn't work, or we didn't do very well with this, right? And we all have an abundance of those things, but what you said right there really struck a chord, because, and Stu, I'm sure you remember, last January, I'm sitting in a dark parking lot, 7:30 at night, just cursing violently, talking about Les and all the things that were seemingly not going well at the time, and having a better sense of judgment at this point now, being able to look back and, again, objectively analyze what occurred. What I felt like we didn't do a good job of last year was this period right now. This, 3 months out, we've got time to put these things in order, organize them, and put everything in motion. And I think for me, being very plan heavy, want visibility, things need to be predictable. Les is the complete opposite. It's give me 5 minutes, I'll have the plan. We can pick up, get ready and go. And I think inevitably, especially with, team setting, there has to be some element of both. And I think for the collective group, the one thing I've had trouble with is understanding what is that complete temperature of the group. So if we have people that are on the side of the spectrum like Les, people that are on the side of the spectrum like me, planned, organized, reactive, pick up and go, how do we actually coalesce as a group and find that common medium temperature? Or is that possible? Is it just we have more of a hierarchical flow where whoever's sitting at that top, we all try to match that energy and that flow pattern? Or is it the person at the top tries to kind of dilute and be a little bit more, common to the group? Do you think there's a preference one way or the other on that? Because this is something that affects every team setting.
Let me hop in there, because I think the piece that you're speaking to really, Danny, is when people come into a complex system, sometimes they want to understand everything initially. And it's like, all right, well, here's this big system and you're coming in. It's like, I could tell you what was going to happen every day for 67 days straight. I could tell you exactly what was going to happen. When people come in, they want to understand it immediately, and they want to study, they want to learn all the facts. And my thought process is just throw you into chaos and you'll figure it out, because I already know what's going to happen. But yeah, obviously that doesn't work in a team setting that well. So yeah, like with that context too, going back to what you just talked about, where you had 12 to 15 years ago, you had 3 different athletes that all were different people. So you had to come up with some way to manage the complexity of that. Like the fact that you could have a team of 15 different people that all move the same, they're all from different backgrounds, they all talk different. You have a complex system of staff, and everyone's trying to understand what's inside of your head as a leader. Like, how do you manage that? How do you lead the people knowing that they're not going to understand? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got to do a better job of leading. Just throwing them in is not leading.
Mm.
That's not the job. The job isn't to just, hey, these guys will figure it out. Like that just leads to chaos. There's no learning through chaos. So it's, a complex system is a learning system. It learns more and more and more, and patterns form between component parts that you understand more and more and more and better and better and better. But if it's just chaos, if there is no defined appreciation for the rules of engagement and the purpose and a conversation around all of these different things, then you're always, these nonlinear effects will always end up in chaos. So it doesn't learn. So to answer your question is, yeah, you need, and this is something that I'm very similar to you, right? Like I'm that way too. And I've been that way as a leader. I'm kind of still that way as a leader. I'm not good. I have to improve upon that. I've often said, well, you just recruit really, really smart people and let them do their job, right? That is a leadership strategy, but it's not a strategy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That isn't a strategy. I'll just recruit Danny Foley and he's really smart, so he'll figure it out. That's not leading. Like you're the leader and you need to lead. Like you're the one that is in leading this complex system. And that means that you are the one that comes up with the models that has conversations around that talks about whatever those rules of engagement are, that lead the debriefs, or the daily debriefs, or the weekly debriefs that I know that you guys do a lot of, right? I'm not saying that you're not a good leader, because you do those things, but it's having those conversations about all of those emergent interactions that you cannot predict and you cannot control. But you can only have a learning organization and a learning system if you do actually have conversations about them.
Yeah, that's deep. Danny, follow up on that.
Yeah. Not the answer I was expecting.
We have to also remember, like, sorry to interrupt you, Danny.
No, you're good.
every system has evolved from a prior condition and is autonomously progressing towards an unforeseeable future state. Right? Always, all systems are fluid. They come from a place and they're going to a place. And this is one of the challenges within this, right? It can go to a better place or it can go to a worse place. It can come from a better place or it can come from a worse place. So we also have to, you as a leader, both of you guys as leaders, have to understand where the system has evolved from. What is the prior condition of the system? What is the prior condition of the systems that relate to that system and the systems that nest within it and all of the component parts within them? And then what are you trying to progress towards? Because it's as I said, these all complex systems are learning systems. There will be some learning going on. So it's, if for good or bad, and if we really want this to be a functioning learning system, meaning it's getting better, then that's where I think the role of the leader is really important, because you can go the wrong way if you don't have strong leadership.
So what do you see when you work with teams? Like, I know you've worked in MLB, NFL. What do you see when you see teams and their systems and how complex they are with the tactical
Mm.
side and all of that? Like, is your advice when you go into consult, does it end up going towards the actual like whole of the system? Or is it, people hit me up all the time, hey, can you come in and do this speed thing? And it's very targeted, but then you get in and you see this like massive system and you're like, actually, you need to focus your attention on something else. Like maybe it is the leadership, like you just mentioned. Like, how do you manage that going into a team? And what do you see?
That's 100% what it is. In the 100 and whatever teams that I've seen over the course of the last 15 to 20 years, like I can count the amount of highly functional teams on one hand. It's a sad indictment of quote unquote professional sport. It's poor. Like we operate through reductionist means because we have a need to understand, control, and predict. And we're often, whether that's just from our ego or our insecurity, or whether it's something that's driven from above, where I have to justify what I'm doing by this thing. But that is the sport. That's almost all things, really. It's why we're still stuck in a reductionist paradigm. Almost everything that we do, we focus on parts rather than patterns and purpose. And what we see in professional team sport is the bigger the team, the more complexity there is, the more people there are, and they add more things to it. And the more things you've got, the more complex it is, the harder it is for you to understand. So you revert more and more towards reductionist thought. So, you're just thinking about whatever metric it is that you're focused on. And most of these guys what are they measuring each week? How many
Mhm.
metrics?
A lot.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah,
It's
a lot.
probably minimum. I mean, it's close to three figures, probably more in many cases. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And, one of the rules of complex systems is that, as I said, it's a hierarchy: purpose, patterns, and parts. And all of these systems work on the opposite. They start with parts. And so when you go in, or when I go in, and they expect us to, when I want to help, they think we're going to go in and help their running technique. Like that ain't it, man. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
so
Seriously.
far down on the list of important things that you need to worry about. And I often, it's funny. Like I go into these teams and do these events, and like I, I, I do this pretty good now, right? I've got a nice little thing. I've got a good presentation. We have some great conversations. I don't know how many times it actually has changed their behavior.
Right.
Like, I don't think ever, you know? Like, I think the only time where it's actually, um, impacted their behavior in a positive way were within teams that were already doing that thing anyway.
Right.
Right. And in teams where they're not doing that, they said, yeah, I agree with all of that stuff. That's great. And they go straight back to doing it the way they did.
Yeah.
Because that's it. And I totally get it. It's totally human nature, right? Like we revert to simplicity, prediction, control, understanding. And especially when we're in a big, complex team. The most highly functioning teams that I've seen, and I'm sure Les, and Danny, your experience will be similar, are the small ones with few people. And often the few people, many of those few people are doing multiple things, right? So you'll have back in my day, the strength coach was often also the physiologist and the sports scientist, nutritionist, and the supplementalist. And in my case, also the physio and the sports psych and all of these other things, the motor learning specialists, whatever. And now you've got multiple people in all of those different roles, all focused on their thing, all in ownership of their thing. And yeah, they understand the importance of the relationships and interacting in a positive way and being part of the team and being on the same bus. But there isn't enough understanding of how all of these things relate to each other. And especially in sports science and the fitness and S&C part, where you've got within that so many different metrics that are going on. And you just focus on these metrics rather than focusing on the bigger picture. It's impossible often for them to be able to zoom out.
Yeah, I mean, my experience has been a team will say, hey, we did this testing, I call it force velocity profiling, and we want to improve this one metric on everybody. And it's like, it's so narrow that if you give an answer that's not what they're expecting, not what they can already predict, then it's like, oh, it's not that valuable. It's like, you can't go in there and say, hey, that's not, I would actually look at this.
That's not why they brought you in.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's not why, like, I'm very clear now. Like, why are you bringing me in? What are your biggest problems? What do you think I specifically can help you with these problems? And there's an understanding, there's rules of engagement here within, myself and within this complex system. And if it doesn't align with what I think I should be talking about, then I'm not interested. Like, if your problem is, we think our sprint technique sucks, so we're bringing you in to help with our sprint technique. Yeah, that's not a conversation I'm willing to have. I'm not interested in that.
And I was thinking about that the other day, and I'm not taking a shot at anyone, kind of am, but the industry's kind of developed around what people are asking for, right? So, like, if teams are asking for sprint technique, well, all of a sudden there's a couple guys that pop up, and it's like, hey, that's what I do, and that's valuable. And they created an industry around that to fulfill that need, which doesn't help, right? So it's super interesting.
Yeah, it really is.
Can I ask you about Canada and Matt Jordan and all of that? Because I know you guys were collecting tons of data back then.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
But it was just me and him. And we only had one thing to be able to collect data on, right? We had a just jump mat. So that's our data. Like, that was that was us being super scientific. And the rest of the data, guess what it was? Weight on bar. And we figured out, okay, let's figure out what weight on bar means. And then, all right, there's weight, and there's also total weight, so total load, and what all of these different things to try to understand what it meant. So it's like we were governed by trying to best understand the relationship between load and adaptation to that load. And that's it. All right, what does load mean and what does adaptation mean? And that drove all of our stuff that we did. And all right, so what's load? Well, it's the amount of weight that you lift. It's how often you lift it, How many sets? How many reps? What is the density? Maybe. What does that mean? So we try to figure out all of these different things to try to better understand load. And how do we adapt to it? So try to come up with ways in which we can better understand that. And that's kind of started our way of trying to process and ask those and answer those questions. And all we had, as I said, was we had a position transducer that we used once in a while that gave us some very crude metrics on velocity. We didn't really use it a lot. What we did use was the jump mat, and we measured that, and we used that to measure all sorts of things every single day. We did that every day with 300 athletes over and over and over and over again. We looked at primarily what we were looking at was counter movement jump and a squat jump. And we just looked at that over and over and over again and tried to find relationships and what was happening based upon what they were doing and where was the different levels of relatedness between the different things that we were doing, the different athletes and different sports and so on and so forth. So yeah, we measured a lot, but it was very crude and it was only two of us. So it was, it wasn't all of these things that we didn't have a force platform. Force platforms back then were thousands and thousands of dollars, and they didn't live in weight rooms. They lived in labs.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't until, years later where we had access weight room in the lab. And that was just very rare, and at that point, no one really knew what was going on. We could just see, all right, that's the amount of force. All right. We didn't know what type of force and really what to really be focusing on then. Like, it was very simple and very rudimentary.
And,
So
and what did, yeah, go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Les, I actually got a quick follow-up on that. So it's interesting to me, like, whenever you talk about that time with Matt, you almost even get like a little smirk to you. Like, so I feel like that was like a really kind of endearing time for you guys. And it was like, kind of on this cutting edge and just figuring things out and going through these iterations. And I'm sure it was a lot of fun for you guys, but it's interesting to me that from what you just said right there, those origins, one of you has gone on to basically redefine how force plates are used and has gone to extreme depths of all the different measures and things that come with force plates. And then the other, I don't know that I've ever seen you use a force plate in person. Is there, do you have any, like, why do you think that
Wow.
is? Is that bias, or is that just the way things ended up materializing for you guys? Like, why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a really good question. First, I have great memories, and Matt does as well, of those days. Like, I don't know if we've talked about this on a podcast before, but our office, and there was 4 of us in our office. Our original office was a closet, and then we had 4 of us in this office. And it's not like they gave us an office. There's just a closet in the back of one of the speed skating coaches' offices. And there was just a bunch of crap in there. And we said, is anybody using that? Not really. All right. So we moved all the crap out of there and put 4 desks in there. And we had 4 people in this closet in the back of a room, like no windows and nothing. And it was like 3 feet by 10 feet.
Oh, come on.
Damn.
30 square foot. That was our office. It was great. And eventually, probably 8 years later, we had our own actual office and real desks in there. I feel like, to answer your question, that's more one of circumstance, like personal circumstance. And like, so Matt got married, had kid, so needed to make money. I didn't. You know what I mean? So I could still be out here and play and do all sorts of stupid things. And I wasn't minded, or wasn't really minding whether I made any money on this or not. I was still trying to figure out my way as a practitioner, where Matt was, he as I said, he got a wife pretty early and had a kid pretty early, and then needed the stability of having a job, and the jobs that were available at the time, were there at the center. And he was more interested, like, he did the master's degree like right off the bat. I think actually I met him when he was doing the Masters, and then started his PhD right off of that. So I think so that's where personal circumstance where he got the family right away, but also his personal interest was in the science part, and I was more interested in the practice. Both
Okay.
of us were really interested in both, and felt like that was what differentiated what we were doing at the Oval. And it wasn't just me and Matt. There was lots of other people. Um, and that just wasn't differentiating right from the jump, but also continued to differentiate what was happening at the Oval and the Sports Center over the next 10 to 20 years, and all of the people that came through there. Like it was really truly this marriage of science and practice. It was always the most important thing, is let's make sure that what we're doing actually matters practically, because we were all coaches, and everybody that we're doing that work were coaches because of the size of this complex system. And it was so small, everybody had to do all things all the time. And where Matt was probably more interested in the science, I was more interested in the practice. Both of us were still interested in the other, in both. He just went that way. That's the road that he took. And then as you go down that road, you just come further and further and further apart from the road that I took, which was going that direction.
That's
So
fascinating.
that's kind of how that all
No,
happened.
it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's
And how, when you guys were working together and collecting all this data, and you had obviously athletes on the team that were like incredible, good players, and then you had athletes that may not have been great players, like what differentiated them? Did any of the data that you were collecting differentiate the best athletes and the best teams, and or not?
Yeah, it was what we began to see is like we were pretty traditional with how we were coaching to begin with, right? Remember, we're going back almost 30 years, like it's the 90s, mid to late 90s. And you kind of wrote it, the programs were being written at the time around some sort of Olympic lift, some sort of squat, some sort of pull. Maybe you've got some sort of functional things going on that looked and felt a little bit more like the task or the sport. But that was kind of it, like it was pretty basic. And what we did begin to see in our some of the testing, that any of the concentric measures just didn't seem to relate. Like the degree of relatedness between this concentric measure did not give us a clue in who was good or bad or indifferent at their sport. Just didn't. But the ones who could jump better, like just seemed like they were more coordinated. They were better. The ones who their strategy, and this is where Matt really started thinking about jump strategy. And I know he's written now a bunch of papers on that. That mattered. There's like the ones who just had what subjectively at the time, and then later proved to be significantly more objectively, just seemed to have a more effective jump strategy, were really good at their sport. But weight on a bar on a power clean, that didn't really matter. Height of a squat jump, that didn't really matter. Elastic strength deficit didn't really seem to matter. Like there's a lot of things that just, you know what? So, and that kind of led us into, well, if that doesn't matter, what does matter? And this is the like 99, 2000, 2001-ish, maybe 2002. Okay, this 3 or 4 years. And at that time, there was a few really impactful, influential people and things and places. One was Super Training Forum. Like Super Training book had come out, right? But the forum was like incredible.
Yeah, because everyone was online just talking through that, right?
Everybody. Like that was the only place. Oh, one of the only places. There was a few other places, but that was the main one. Like that was the best one, man. Like
Mm.
like Mel did a great job of that forum, or setting up that forum, and just building this platform for people to have conversations. And he didn't have anything other than than to go on that forum. Like, it was active, and it was always like really good people, like really, really smart people, including Mel, having conversations. So that was really influential. Schmidt-Bleicher and our access, not even Schmidt-Bleicher, well, not even just Schmidt-Bleicher, but our access in the West to what had been going on in the East really, really started coming to the forefront. Like, we had much more access to what DDR and Russians and all these different systems were doing in the past through different means, and part of that was Atsky-Orsi's book, and part of it was obviously through super training and Perkashansky and Schmidt-Bleicher stuff and what he was doing as well in Germany. And I remember that he had like, for me, it was a really influential paper. It was on the SSC. And he would argue that we've been kind of focusing on the wrong S. We've focused so much on the shortening, but it's the stretching part that really matters. And that was, my really simplified understanding of what he was talking about was, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And what Atsky-Orsky and Sif were saying, that, very similarly. And there's a part actually in their book, I think there's one paragraph where they talk about reflexive isometrics, which was essentially just weighted depth jumps, and the importance of this one capacity, this ability to attenuate force fast. High force is really fast. So, okay, that's something like that's really important. Dan put me on to Werner Gunther and some of the things that those guys were doing, and the importance of static dynamics and different things that if everyone's seen the Werner Gunther videos by this point. But that was all right. This is really interesting. And he was on bobsled. He actually bobsledded for maybe a year, maybe 2 years. I can't remember how many, but I saw him train a couple of times, and it was freaky. And then, funny enough, I think this was 01 or 02. That ESPN thing was the one that there was an ESPN special that was minutes long, like was really long, to talk about S&C for minutes on ESPN was huge. Probably the first time ever, right? And they did a expose, or just not an expose, but like a little study of what Jay Schrader, strength coach, still is a strength coach, but I think based in Phoenix, Arizona, and his work with Adam Archuleta. And Adam Archuleta was a football player who went to Arizona State University. I think he was okay. I don't think he was great.
He was good, very good.
But he was good. But I don't think he was seen as being like a top draft pick, was he?
He wasn't a top 100, but he was.
Yeah.
He was a baller. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But he was missing. I think the key part is missing the athletic part.
Right.
I guess. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Originally.
Yeah. I don't know the full details of that, but I do remember that through Jay Schrader's work, he went and crushed the combine.
Smashed it.
Just smashed it, and went from being a potential second or third rounder to being a first rounder, right? Is he first rounder? But anyway, he moved up a lot, and this is what he talked about. These really quite interesting and somewhat strange strength and conditioning methods that Jay Schrader was doing. So I saw this and said, this is kind of along the same lines of all these other things that we've been thinking about. And all through this, we're really starting to lean into the importance of weighted eccentric work, not just accentuated eccentric work, because that had come in the past a few years earlier, where I think it was probably through the influence of Charles Poliquin, who was at the Sports Center before I was, or just as I was starting there. He is when he left, and he was big into eccentric work, right? But he wasn't big into fast eccentric work. So we started playing with that, and it just seemed like the athletes who could do that well were the good athletes. You know, and again, we didn't really have anything to measure this. It just seemed like, all right, the people who can attenuate high forces fast, those people seem to be really good. And this aligns with all of these things that are also going on in this strength and conditioning world right now. And then we started thinking that way. I said, all right, we're going to stop doing the traditional way of training, you know, Olympic lift, a squat and a press, some sort of pull, and maybe a couple of assistant workouts, and now build it around this pretty specific eccentric capacity. And that's when Matt really went deep into that stuff, right? By that time, he's starting to work on his PhD and blah blah blah. So it's fast forward 20 years, and now he understands that like no one on the planet.
Uh,
But that's kind
did
of
you,
little.
did you end up doing like, or I guess you could say like, what is this, 20 years ago when you started the reflexive eccentrics piece, or was sooner than that? Like what was the time frame for you on
Yeah, it
that?
was right about 2000. Yeah, it was
Okay.
99, 2000-ish. Yeah. And then I always say that I kind of figured out how to fit it into the system by about 2008. It took me a
Mm.
long time, man, like a really long time.
Did you like over
And you
index
mentioned,
on
say it again?
did you over index on just removing all traditional strength and go straight into all reflexive eccentrics and
No,
then
I
have
just
balance,
because
or
we just couldn't understand the load properly. Like we didn't, all right, well, you know, what and how it um how it integrates with all the other things. So it's not like we cut everything else out. It's just like, where does this fit? How do we load it? What is the density pattern like? And I remember, like, we didn't have any other way other than just kind of trial and error to figure it out, you know, and what other people were doing. So and we're having pretty good results, quote unquote. You never know, but it felt like this is working out well. But I feel like I finally got comfortable with it the the longer I got through the O's. And my very, very overly general sense of the the organization of this capacity was y- I thought about building as much tension through the system as I could.
Hmm.
So, you know, tension is almost a proxy for um, the magnitude of the force application, say, and all of the things that come along with that. So I cannot do that. I do that through whatever strategies, right? Accentuated eccentrics being a primary within that. Maybe some isometrics, some different ways, isometrics at different angles, and so on and so forth. But the goal was to maximize that. And then once I felt like that was maximized or at the rate of diminishing returns of that capacity, how now can we, or how then going forward, can we still reach this same degree of tension, but increase the speed of how we got there? So faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And that would lead us into the competitive phase. So that's kind of the way in which I quote unquote periodize that over the course of time. And then it's trying to better understand when these larger magnitude, larger force magnitude things were phased out. How often, like, what was the density pattern that they needed to, or I need to use them to retain the capacity that we had developed through increasing or building as much tension as we can. And that's when I really started better understanding the individual nature of this. Because for some, it was I had a cat that I a coach named Pavle Jovanovic, who was bobsledder for USA, and he was an absolute freak,
Mm,
like one of the strongest guys that you'll ever see. And his density pattern was like once every 3 weeks.
mm,
Like I just had to go to the well and force magnitude once every 3 weeks, and he would continue getting stronger. And others, it was 4 days.
mm,
So the ones with 4 days, like, all right, how do I now work on this? What by then we're already talking. we were calling reflexive eccentrics. How do I work on reflexive eccentric capacity while retaining this magnitude capacity simultaneously? So that's when we started playing with complexes in different ways to make sure that we're keeping both kind of topped up.
Danny, do you have a follow-up there? I got
Well, I
my
was
6.
saying that kind of
Yeah.
sounds like better segue right there.
Literally, yeah. No, tell Stu about Jetta a little bit.
Go ahead. You got more depth on that one.
All right, well, this kid is extremely strong. I mean, he was moving 535 pounds at like 0.8. Like, he's incredibly strong. We got to a point where like, all right, this is strong enough, and we're struggling to get you into the higher speed zones. Like, we can't get you running as fast as what you should be running right now based on how strong you are. And that's where we dived into Matt Jordan's work, understanding force plates. We were looking at different metrics on the force plates, like how fast they can decelerate, the rate of force development on the braking side. And like we realized, like, all right, we just developed this kid to be extremely strong and explosive concentrically, but he cannot attenuate forces, and he doesn't move through that deceleration phase very well at all. And there's like a bunch of other structural reasons within that, but that's where I started looking into what you've done with the reflexive eccentrics and Matt Jordan's work, and we just implemented a block of it for 3 weeks, and this dude PRs in everything, like everything. He just qualified for push champs. He ran his fastest 30 meters he's ever run in his life last week, and that's where some of this questioning is coming from. Which leads me into, okay, we've built him strong. We introduced the reflexive eccentrics. You talked about minimal effective dosages that keeps you strong, but I think my next question is like, are there athlete profiles? Like, is the person that's very good at producing eccentric forces fast typically not good at producing high force? Like, let's say from an accentuated eccentric, like, that is, are they not good at that piece on the strength side of things? And is that what they need to touch on every now and then more often? Or did you not see patterns within those types of athletes?
I think it's important for us as coaches to build models to make sense or better sense of the complexity that we see every day. So one of the ways in which we do that is to categorize different athletes as different types of movers. And often the risk here is an athlete could be in one category, but maybe right on the edge of that category and another category, where another athlete in that category could be on the other edge of that category and a category that's totally different. And yet we train both of these athletes similarly because they're in the same category. And this is where it gets really challenging for us. Like, we need to allow space for that. Every single athlete that we train is different. They're all different. So some can attenuate massive forces. Some can also attenuate massive forces fast. Some of those people can also concentrically deliver massive forces. And some of those people can also concentrically deliver massive forces fast. And all of the opposite of all of that. So you've got athletes that are literally everywhere. If you've got 100 athletes, they're moving in 100 different ways, delivering force in 100 different ways. So that's a really hard starting spot. It's an impossible starting spot. So we have to start somewhere. And that's where, okay, different people have done it different ways, look at force velocity profile, and so on and so forth. And essentially what we end up with is pretty delineated, dichotomous things. All right, you're in this category, you're doing this. You're force deficient, so you're going to be working more force. You're velocity deficient, so you're going to be working more velocity. Even though of the 100 people that you may be force deficient or velocity deficient, One could be only just force deficient, and one could be massively force deficient, and so on and so forth, right? So I much prefer to operate within continuums rather than categories these days. So when we look at, like James's stuff, and I've contributed to that as much as probably anybody. The four quadrants, which I love. It's incredible. It's extremely, extremely helpful. For anybody who's listening, don't understand what that is. It's based on James Wild's PhD studies. He started his PhD. He just PhD in the teens. He finished it a couple of years back. Started publishing on it in, I think, 2022, and it's just looking at sort of the kinematic profiles of how athletes sprint, and it's looking at the relationship between ground contact time and flight time, and the relationship between step length and step frequency, and velocity. And it places athletes into a category based upon those different relationships. And you could be, for example, somebody who has really long step length. It takes you a long time to create that long step, so that'll put you in one category. On the other end, you might create force really, really fast and be off the ground really, really quickly and have a really short step length. That's another category. But rather than looking at it as these as four separate categories for me now, I think it's more useful to look at it on a continuum. So you're looking at the continuum between step length and step frequency, and that's a single continuum. And you're looking at the continuum between ground contact time and flight time, and that's a single continuum. And I think that way we can be a little bit more accurate with some of the ways in which we use the information to inform our practice. I've totally lost track of what your question was at this point.
That was great. That was great. I have a follow-up, which will direct it somewhat.
Unless that answered your question at all, I apologize. But I remember there was a question that it related to that, so I just started.
No, it did, because it was really just about, the question was really about just like, where would you put certain athletes and bucket them, as everybody in the industry says. Which leads me to my next question. Do you think the athletes that can handle the reflexive eccentrics really well, they're good at that, also handle braking on contact and sprinting a little bit better?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So going back to kind of our work prior, like the degree of relatedness between those two things are really, really high, like super duper high.
And does it help them coordinate? Like, I know we've talked about the 2-mass model. We've talked about the difficulty in coordinating the foot ground interaction. And that's what separates some of the best sprinters in the world from like regular athletes. But do you think it helps them coordinate and do that? Or do you think that's...
No, I don't think it's a coordinative thing. I don't think it's a qualitative thing at all. I think it's strictly quantitative.
Interesting. Okay. So Gout, probably one of the future greats. What makes him so... What if you were just to observe him as a spectator, and you watch him run in slow motion, you watch him run in fast motion, you watch him run from the side, the front, the back, what could you infer about his physical capacities by how he runs?
By how he runs or through other means?
Let's say just by how he runs. You have no other means of understanding any of the data around him, but you did have an opportunity to watch him from the front, the side, the back, from the top, whatever angles you need. What could
one of the things that we can infer by watching him, we may not have the specific metrics or the specific ability to study or measure these metrics, but we can infer that he has a significant step length. We can just count steps over 100 meters, and we see that his step length is really long relative to some other elite sprinters. We can see that he's on and off the ground really quickly. We can see that there's a fairly small degree of hip extension, so the travel of the thigh behind the center of mass is pretty minimal. We can see that the magnitude of the front side lift is ridiculous. Like his knee gets up past his belly button on some steps.
Mm-hmm.
We can see that he carries himself extremely tall, that there seems to be very, very minimal depression of the center mass through ground contact. And we can see that his joint stiffness around his ankle is extremely, extremely high. So those are the things that we can look at. And we also see that we can see some more qualitative things too, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can see that he's really skinny. We can see that seemingly, if you look at the spinal engine methodology, not methodology, but kind of, look at the spinal engine ability, let's say. That looks really good. Like he seems to be using everything to run fast. He looks extremely coordinated from top to bottom. He's very, very fluid, very, very rhythmical. So all of those things are things that we can infer.
Huh.
And I want to go deeper on any of that. But this is, but again, like sometimes we have to be really careful. Like studying outliers is a really, really important thing.
Yeah.
Like it's really important for us to understand an outlier. It's really important to understand Ben Johnson. It's really important to understand Usain Bolt. It's really important to understand Gout. But just because of these are outliers for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They're different than everybody else.
Mm.
Even in this really, really what you would think is a super homogeneous population, super duper elite sprinters. Let's say there's 20 on the planet. There's 20 out of 8 billion. They're all really different. And the one who's the most different, Gout, is very different than all the rest of them. It's really interesting to look at all of these things. But we have to be very, very important how we use those differences to influence our work on other things. Because we don't work with, for the most part, we don't work with outliers. We work with people who are way closer, like right here in the middle of that bell curve is what we're typically work with, not these ones on the way, way on the outside edge.
Makes sense. Yeah. Danny, did you have anything on that?
I do have a follow-up there. So what is the important, how do I phrase this? What are some of the things that you're extracting from the outliers and then translating or transferring into more of this typical population? Is it to build a better reference? Is it to understand, what these anomalies are? Or is it to just simply have an appreciation for? Like, I think that's something I actually get hung up on a little bit myself is, particularly in this conversation of sprinting, we were looking at Gout's feet for hour and a half the other night in slow motion. And we kind of came to this point of, well, this is an extreme outlier. So how does this now correspond to 16-year-old, youth female soccer athletes? Right. And so how do you connect those?
And some of that's like we're trying to understand what causes that. So like that step length, like what caused that step length and what can we understand about that process that would then transfer over to that soccer player?
Yeah, I think it gives you an understanding of the boundaries of your system, like what is possible on one end. So there's the edge, and that's one edge, and here's another edge, and it's way over here. And we know that all the people that we work with are somewhere between these two edges. But it's important to understand where the edges are. And then we can start to, okay, this person is closer to this edge than they are to this edge. They may not be Gout, but they move kind of like Gout in ways, like these types of things. They're really super stiff and blah, 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 and, really elastic and really, really front side, and okay, so you have something on the edge that you can compare it to. So there's some lessons on that edge. And there's on the other edge, let's say you've got Ben Johnson, right? The man of the infamous 550-pound squat or whatever. And he's on that end. And he's a force-producing machine. And he's not. He's also super duper elastic too, by the way. But let's say he didn't have all this elasticity that a guy like Gout had, and all he had was this incredible maximum strength capacity. That gives you another way to do things. So when we're looking at things, and that's kind of what we do, right? We better understand a thing by comparing it to another thing. That's all. That's how we understand the world. So it's when you've got, that's what we use Gout for. We don't say, okay, Gout's feet does this, so that's okay for everybody else's feet to do this,
Right.
or we want somebody else's feet to do this. It's Gout's feet, and they do this. And then we, as when we're watching this, and I'm sure you guys do this, part of our job when we are watching is not just to say, he's really fast or she's really fast. And all of these things contribute to that person being really fast. Some of them may not contribute. So when you look at Gout's feet, for example, the question we ask ourselves is this problematic? And if it is a problem, why is it a problem? And then once we understand, or once we've figured out, or once we've kind of done the work to better understand maybe why it is a problem, maybe then we can write a little bit of a thought experiment about the strategy that we might put in place to improve upon that. And through that process, that helps inform our work with other athletes. So we look at Gout, and we spend 90 minutes looking at his feet. And we say, all right, we think it's a problem. Why is it a problem? Okay, we list all of the things why it could be potentially problematic. Okay. And that gives us now a pathway into better understanding some of the strategies that we might put in place. And I think that is a really, really good way to learn from outliers, say. And once again, I talked too long and I forgot your question. So I'm hoping
that was fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess to kind of tie this back to some of the things that we opened with too, right? Like a part of this coaching acumen, coaching eye, professionalism is simply just genuine experience, a bandwidth of reference, understanding where these boundaries or edges are as you described it. And then when we look to this contemporary world of human performance, we're in this obsessive automation phase and everything trying to become predictive, and the influences of AI and all these other things. But what you just described right there is a perfect example of the artistry of perspective, inference, understanding, discretion, and so on and so forth. And I think we almost always work it back to these same finality points, but everybody always wants to have this cookie cutter, templated answer for everything. And between how you described the quadrants to how you were describing that right there, both of those are perfect illustrations of not just it depends, which is always a cop out, but it's the infusion of all these different factors, and then your expertise or experience in being able to discern how these things may or may not be problematic or advantageous or so on and so forth, right? So I think it's excellent.
So in what I do, obviously, I'm integrated very deeply into the therapy space, because at the level that I work, in the sport that I work in, the quality of movement is so much influenced by the quality. And let's say the outcome of the movement is so influenced by the quality of the movement. And I think for the most part, like the best therapists can really influence the quality of movement better than coaches can through their work. So what do therapy, like and I've worked with thousands of therapists now over the course of time. And of those thousands, there's probably more than this, but let's say there's 6. There's 6 really good ones. And I look at what the commonalities are between those 6. And that's kind of what we do, right? When we look at anything to try to figure out why something's working, we're looking at all the people who do that well, and then we look at the commonalities between those things. And all of those 6 people do work in very, very different ways. Very different ways. But they can get to the same outcome, which is, for me, I want a better quality movement. I want this to look and feel better. And there's 6 people that do that really, 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 really well. And what are the commonalities? It's not in the component parts in that system. It's not in the things that they do. It's in the strategies, the patterns, and the purpose that they put in place. I guess of those things, right? And it just reminds me, Danny, of what you said there about it's not about when you're let's give another example here of watching film. You said you took 90 minutes and watching film, and you saw some things, and Chris probably saw some things, and Les saw some things. I don't know who else was there, but all of you guys probably saw different things in different ways. We've talked about this a lot. Like, you've sent me film in the past, and I've told you what I've seen, and that's often different than what you've seen. In fact, it's almost always different than what you've seen. And I've done the same thing. Like, I'll take film of stuff, and if I can't figure it out, I'll send it out to people. And sometimes I just think something's really interesting, and I'll send that out to people. Hey, what do you think of this? And I'll send it typically out to like 8, 10, 12 people. And you know where this is going. And probably if you're listening to this, you know where this is going. I get 8, 10, or 12 different opinions on what's happening from 8, 10, 12 really, really smart people. Why? Because they are looking at the component parts of this system.
Yeah.
Now, if they went and coached these people, then they may get to the same outcome, but in very, very different ways. We're all seeing different things because, and it goes kind of back to what I was saying before, right? Like, we as complex adaptive systems have evolved from a prior condition. We have a history. We have a subjectiveness to ourselves. Like, all of the history that we have, all of the people that I have looked, that I have watched, that I have observed, all the video that I've looked at gives me this today. This brings me to what I see. And that's very different from Danny. That's very different from Les. And it's very different from all of these other people that I send things to. And I feel like that's really important to understand when we're observing movement and trying to improve movement. There isn't one way to do things. There never is in complexity. That doesn't mean that we don't go through the process to try to figure out what we're seeing. It doesn't mean that we don't have conversations with others, because others will see things that maybe we haven't seen yet, that we haven't been able to understand yet. But all of this, like, complexity is subjective in nature. It's relative, right? Based upon, like, if I sent Nicole, maybe Nicole's not a good, let's use Triana instead, Les's wife.
She knows nothing about anything.
If I sent her a video of Gout Gout, she's going to look at Gout Gout and say, that looks good. Like, that's like that, and that'll be about her feedback. She won't have much feedback because she doesn't have a prior history. She hasn't evolved from anything where she's done this before. So this is a very simple system for her. And if I sent it to Dan, who's got 50 years of prior history, he's going to give you a laundry list of crap. You know what I mean? And if you're not ready for that laundry list of crap, then it looks like, you know what, he's over-complexifying this. No, he's just at a different level than you. Complexity is subjective. It's relative. It's not complex to him. All of this big laundry list of things that he's seeing, that's just where he's at today based upon his history. Where if you said to Triana, she says, his knees are pretty high. Okay, good. You know what I mean? That's we need to appreciate that it's, we're all in different places. And we're all coaching people who are in different places to do different things in different ways. It's complexity upon complexity upon complexity, interacting with complexity. I mean, that has to be a starting point. Because, like, if you ignore that, and this is typically what we do, right? You guys have seen there's a famous cartoon of this. It's a road, and there's a road or a path, and it goes to this sign. And one sign says, and I think at the top it says answers.
Mm.
And there's a bunch of people on the road, and they're all lined up. And it says on the top of the sign, it says answers. And one arrow goes to the left, and it says simple but wrong. And all of the people are going that way. And then the other arrow that goes right says complex but right. And there's like one or two people going on that path. Because that's kind of what we want. We want simplicity, even when it's wrong. And that goes back to our conversation less when we're talking about when we go into teams, right? They want simple wrong answers rather than complex right answers. You know, we continue to treat complex systems as if they were simple. We assume that parts are independent, causes are linear, outcomes are predictable. But this is not how living systems work. It's not how complexity works.
I have so much. Danny, but go. Yeah, go.
Do you think that that is just a nature of human behavior that like, so what comes to mind for me there is the fear of the unknown, right? Like we'll take the known devil, you know, over the unknown fear or whatever it is, right? But like we think about the inducing anxiety that we have with the fear of the unknown and trying to create or forecast familiarity to suppress that anxiety. So from a coaching standpoint, and this is something that absolutely relates to me in real life, you know, I think a part of this demand for simplicity is to reduce the amount of unfamiliarity or lack of knowing to at least be able to formulate some ground to stand on and have a better sense of comfortability with. It may not be the full truth or the whole truth or the completely right answer, but it's simplified enough to a point where I can gravitate to it and then feel like I have some sense of ownership in what I'm observing. You think that's kind of what's at play here?
Yeah.
And you're still trying to keep a job too at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you'll keep a job if you do a good job.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that starts, as I said, like, I totally get it. It's a very human thing. But it's ignoring reality. And if you want to be good at this, like, you have to start living in the real world first. Like, there has to be an appreciation for the world that we're living in. And for me, I've never seen anybody who's good at what they do who doesn't recognize that first and foremost. Now, if you don't want to be good, like if you're not that interested and you just want a job and you just like the job how it is, and you like using your Force platform and measuring all these things, and that's fun and cool, and yeah, go ahead. That's fine. Like, there's no judgment there. But if you really, really, truly want to understand what's going on and to try to impact it in positive ways, then it has to start with an appreciation of the world that you're living in. It has to start there. And if you don't start from that, you're just going down the wrong path to begin with. You can do cool things on that path. You can enjoy yourself. You can have impact, but it's the wrong stuff. It starts with, and there are strategies that you can put in place, and you can't just say, it's all complex, so I don't know what to do. Like that's just a cop out, right? But embracing uncertainty is a mindset shift, and we start there, right? We have to reframe how we design interventions. We have to do that. We have to adopt living assessments rather than periodic assessments. We have to start looking at our work as implementing safe to fail experiments rather than programs. So, it's, for me, I don't want to repeat myself, but that's kind of where I'm at now.
What is what is your interest right now in learning? Like obviously complex systems, but what are you learning right now? What are you studying?
Um, I was having this conversation the other day with my friend Marco Aurel. Marco is a Italian sprint coach who's he's pretty young in his career, but he's really, really smart. He's a sprint coach slash osteopath. He's his own little system, and he's building
Wow.
a little system as well, right? He's got 3 assistant coaches and 3 assistant therapists, and he's got a group of like 8. It's great. Deep thinker. And he was asking me about supplementation, about because he doesn't do anything with pre-race or post-race with any of the athletes that he works with. So, and he said, I feel like, do I need to know much about that? And I said, not necessarily, but you need to have deep knowledge on probably 3 things. And you have to have broad knowledge on all the things in your system. So if you've got 3 things, you're doing great. If you've got 2 things, you're good. You're in the in the right ballpark. You're moving in the right direction. And if you got 1 thing, well, that's good. It's a start. You have deep domain expertise on 1 thing, but to be really good at this thing, you need to go deep on another thing as well. And if to be really good, need to go deep again on a third. And what are those 3 things? If you look at the health and performance ecosystem, let's go a little bit deeper into that and say coaching elite sprinters system. And that's your system. What are the things that you need to know about? You need to know a lot about biomechanics. Are you deep in that? Yeah. Okay, good. Are you really, really deep in the health end of things through therapy? Yeah. I'm an osteopath. I'm very deep into that. Okay, cool. Are you deep into programming? Yeah. Okay. So right now you've already got 3 deep domain expertise. Now to answer your question then, how much do you need to know about supplementation? Enough. And that's it. You just need to know enough about it. And that's just, it's important. And this is why it's important. And then if you need to know more, you have somebody in your network who has domain expertise within that. That's your job at this point as a coach. You've got deep domain expertise on this, deep domain expertise on this, deep domain expertise on this, or maybe you're 7 or 8 out of 10 on all of these 3 things. Now your job is to be 2 or 3 out of 10 on all of the other things and build a network where you've got domain experts in all of them that you can refer to when you're stuck and when you need to know a little bit more.
Uh,
So for me, that's, Danny, you asked what I'm kind of deep in right now, and this conversation with Marco I was reflecting on what my domain expertise is. I still feel like I have domain expertise on sprint biomechanics. I've got domain expertise on motor learning. I've got domain expertise on programming. And I used to have domain expertise on therapy and S&C. I don't anymore. I'm like 5 out of 10 on those now. But I have people in my network that are, so I'm good. I used to have like a pretty good, like a 5 or 6 or maybe 7 out of 10 on nutrition supplementation. I don't anymore. I'm significantly less on that now, but I've got other people that I can refer to. So for me now then is to make sure that I'm still learning enough about those things that I need to know enough about to keep them up to a level where I can understand them in context and go deeper into the things that are really driving me. And for me right now, it's like I'm writing this paper slash book with Rob Wilson, and on using a complexity science approach to better understand health and performance. Thus, what we've been talking about a lot over the course of this conversation. So that's been 90% of my reading lately.
uh. Let's say outside of that, in terms of like the things you listed, like let's say strength, sports science. I don't know what the other categories could be. Nutrition. What's the one piece that you're like, I want to spend some more time and dive deeper into that?
Yeah, I think like the one thing I don't do enough um real research on or reading on is the psychology piece.
Uh,
Like, I probably need to be better at that. It's obviously it's so important, but I'm not interested. Like, I am interested,
Uh,
but like nothing good's been done. You know, I just don't feel like me reading another sports psych book or another psychology book really helps me that much.
mm,
So I do a lot of reading on philosophy, obviously. And I feel like that helps me. But maybe I need to also expand that and read more on general psychology. Maybe I need to do that.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't.
I'm reading my friend Tom Tumbleson, who's the director of athletics at Manchester City, used to be the director of performance at England Rugby. He recommended a book to me. Hold on a second, I'll bring it up. And I'm listening to it. He read it. I'm listening to it. And is that no? That's not what it is. Sorry. The Courage to Be Disliked.
Mm,
And I always looked at that. So, like it's a fun title, right? And I've always kind of felt that. Like I don't care if you like me, man. I've never really attributed that with courage or not being courageous, but that's kind of been a thing that has always been there with me. Um, and but so I saw that book and I said, that's interesting, but I never read it. And then Tom suggested that I give it a read, so I'm listening to it. And it's written by two Japanese guys, and it's basically taking Adler's perspective. So Adler was a psychologist, kind of around the time of what's the heck's the other guy's name? Oh, most famous psychologist on the planet,
Sigmund Freud.
Sigmund Freud, around the same time. But really interesting. Just very interesting. It's not a good book. Like I'm not really enjoying it, to be honest with you. I'm kind of annoyed. So it's about that conversation. It's a ongoing conversation between this Adlerian guru. So he's taking the Adlerian perspective on life, and he's teaching this young guy who's having some issues about how to get through his issues. And I'm really annoyed by the young guy. Like he's super annoying. So it's taking me a long time to read it,
Mm,
but it's given me some interest into Adler. So on the side at the same time, I'm reading a bunch of Adler stuff as well. So
there we go.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Love it.
I got about 2-3 minutes, and I gotta get to a session here. I suppose the natural segue to the conclusion of this brilliant little segment we've recorded here this morning is to remind the audience that we have an event coming up here in Grand Cayman Islands, our second annual Team Speed. Stu, we were talking a little bit before we started recording about where we're heading with this, and obviously a lot of the things that we discussed in the podcast here are all prevalent for us with what we're doing right now. But if we had anybody listening to this that was interested or curious about this event we have, what's your 30-second elevator to convince them to sign up for this thing?
I think what's really interesting about these events that we've had, and we've had a few of them now, we've had one in Cayman, is the debrief on the last day. And as always, man, like everyone's just, man, this has been so good. So great. Like, and it's not, they don't say that it's been great because they learned this and learned that and learned this and learned that. It's not about all these specific things. It's like, it's deeper than that. And then what's really cool is to see all the Instagram posts that come over the course of the next week. And
Right.
how many comments are something like, man, this is life-changing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Like everybody knows that, all right, Stu, Danny, and Les, they're smart guys. We're going to learn some stuff about speed and how to apply that and help our athletes get faster. And that's what it's about. but that's not what it's about, is it? It's about so much more than that. Like it's the we were talking about before about what differentiates kind of some of the things that we do at Altus, what you guys do at Spellman Performance and Rude Rock, and why we've kind of come together, and what we do in both individually and together differs from others, and it's that part of it. It's the building of community, and I feel like we've done for whether that's been explicitly or an explicit goal of ours or not. That's what's happened, right? Like it's not about networking for us. It's not about learning this new technique. It's about building a community. And for me, like I love these events, man. Like I just get so much from these events and being around these people and hearing more about their stories and hearing more about your guys' stories and working with you guys. And it's, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I think they're great events. I think these are no brainers. I think the cost of this is incredible. And you will get so much out of this, and so much more than what you think you're getting, even if you're thinking that you're coming and going to get a good deal.
If I can tack on to that, I've had probably 7 or 8 people that have reached out, since we made the announcement about 10 days ago. And, of course there's a promotional responsibility. Of course, we're trying to get people to come to the things that we're putting on, but right in line with what you just said there, these people who have kind of, reached out and asked about it. The response that I've been giving everyone is, I've never done anything quite like this. And here's the reason why. You mentioned the debriefs on the last day. Every event is always the same. We got to share contact. We got to stay in touch. Let's link up. Let's do something. And honest to God, there were 6 people, 8 of the 12 people that we had last year signed up, or 15 that we had signed up, I still communicate with regularly, like multiple times. I still communicate with you. And we go to, Jordan Fairclough was one that, like, that's like a friendship that has evolved. The JT and DJ and Nick, and like, that's a relationship that's evolved. When they were in San Diego, they hit us up, So I think besides or to kind of, capitalize on your point there, it's a real relationship builder. We're really going to manifest something out of time like this that will continue beyond a 4-day event for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's life changing. I mean, Jordan works with us in some capacity. Bex has come down.
Yep.
I mean, it's insane. Like, just which led into the one that we had in Chicago, the Altis event,
Right.
where you saw some of those people and we got to catch up with them. We're like, bro, what have you been up to? Oh man, I left Liverpool and I started my thing, or I developed my own system. Like, there's so much that came out of that from a life altering standpoint. It was the catalyst for a couple life altering events for some people in our network. So, I know the reason.
Man. Like it's it's been really influential for us too, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
hugely.
And it's in Grand Cayman. It's incredible. Like part of it is that. Part of it is what we're putting together and the individuals. But part of it, man, it's a special place. You don't know until you're there. Like, it is a special place.
Yeah, that's why our whole families are coming because I wasn't allowed to go without them. They were like, "All right, we're all coming." My daughter still talks about this boy that she met a year ago.
No.
And she's like, "Is Mason gonna be there?" I was like, "I hope not." Like, we're not developing a long-term relationship here. No, but it is special. The people there are special. I've never been to a place like that. I've been to a couple cool places, but the community around it, just the hotel, the staff that works there, it's
Palm
everything that wraps into it. Palm Heights is amazing. Yeah, the food. So we all agreed to do this, which is funny, whether or not people were coming, because of how badly we just wanted to have an excuse to be there and to learn from each other. But then you add on the other group of it. There's no like hierarchy in learning. Like, everyone's at the same level. I'm sitting there learning from Stu. Danny's learning from me. I'm learning from Danny. Like, we're all together and we're all sharing. I think the most important piece that I took away was the conversations that we had in between the presentations. Presentations were fine. They were great. but everyone learned during the conversations that we had in between presentations, the sharing, the questions, the answers. Like it was so cool just to hear everyone's perspective, especially when Jordan started talking and we had Dusty hop in, we had Bex hop in. Like that's where the learning happens, and it gives you the opportunity to spend 5 days with people to do that. It's more than just presentations. So yeah, I'm super excited about it.
That's the advantage. Yeah, that's the advantage of having the intimate setup to this. Like Chicago was fantastic. That was an awesome weekend, but there's a big difference in takeaway when you have 300 people versus 15 people. And I think that excellent factor just changes the dynamic of what people are, actually able to take away. Unless, like, one of your favorite heuristics is, so what about Monday morning, right? We spend this money, we take this time, we travel to these events, and it's a lot of great information, but like, do I go back and then Monday morning, do I do something actually different based on this event that I just went to? And I think if you go to this and you're not doing at least one thing, two things different on Monday morning, then, we just, I don't know what to tell you. Like you're going to change something about the way you're going about this immediately. It's effective immediately.
1,000%. Yeah. Well, Stu, we've taken couple hours out of your day. I know you're probably missing the Liverpool Arsenal game right now, or you're just watching it.
I'm just watching it right here. It's the in the 92nd minute. There's 5 more minutes of injury time to go. Liverpool 1, Arsenal 0.
There we go. Solid. Are you an Arsenal fan?
No, I'm a Man City fan. We lost today. We lost to Brighton.
Yeah, we won't talk about Manchester United on this podcast after what happened this past week. But no, thank you for having the time to be on here. This is incredible. Learned a ton from you. Just continuously learning from you. You don't even understand how much you've impacted my life, and I'm sure Danny's life as well. Just you gave me so much. I can't even repay you. We always have conversations like, what can we do for Stu? Like, how can we payback Stu? And we're still trying to figure that out. But
give me money. Just give me more money.
Yeah, I've given you a lot.
Just write me a check.
Danny has all the money. He controls the finances for this. He's got control of the bank account. So he'll send you a check in the mail.
Y'all want to. Hey, it's a pleasure being on the very. It's just, I don't know if it's the very first, but it's a pleasure to be on the Danny and Les show.
Oh, Danny, and
it's a pleasure having you guys in my life, personally and professionally. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again in 6 weeks.
Can't wait, man. I really can't.
6 weeks. All right, let's do it. I'm bringing all my kids too, so you can babysit Stu.
Great. Can't wait.